All right, we're going to go through the problems for the lab exercises for Chapter 2 now. So I suggested you look at problems 2, 4, and 15. So up here, I already have the answers for 2 pre-generated. 2 gave us a bunch of raw data and said, build us a frequency distribution table, including columns for proportion and percent. So let's just remember some of the basics here, that we go from high to low, always the highest score in the score column down to the lowest possible score. Notice that we included a row for the value of 2, even though there weren't any 2s in the data. We still have to include it in the table here. So we've got our frequencies, our proportions, and our percentages. And then we were asked to put this in a frequency polygon, or a polygon graph. So over here is the completed polygon. So notice that we've got the axes with roughly the correct proportions. They are numbered, they are labeled, all the dots are put in. Again, even with this 2 and 0, we have to plug that in. We don't skip over it. Notice that we're grounded 1 below our lowest score. 1 below 1 is 0. We're grounded 1 above our highest score. 1 above 8 is 9. So again, when it comes to classroom performance, grade performance, you're going to need to, for sure, build me frequency distribution tables. Over here, this is just too clunky to do kind of inside of a Canvas quiz or whatnot. But I will be giving you graphs and asking you to evaluate them to tell me what's right or what's wrong. More specifically, really, is what mistakes that I make I'm going to have you look for. So those are collectively the answers for just question 2 there. Now we want to take a quick look at question 4. Question 4 gives us a frequency distribution table. And 4a, so it's a little bit weird. The questions for 4 are at the bottom of one column, and then the actual data shows up at the top of the other column. So don't look just above it, because that data above it with the raw scores of 5 down to 1, that's for question 3. You got to look at the next column over. They kind of laid it out weird. So we've got raw scores of 10, 9, 8, 7, and 6, frequencies of 1, 2, 4, 3, and 2. I'm not going to rewrite the table. You've got it right there in front of you. So question 4a asks us to determine the value of n. Remember, n is the number of scores in a sample. And we get that by simply getting the summation of the frequencies. So we go down the frequency column and we get 1 plus 2 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2. That tells us that there were 12 scores in the sample. For B, it wants us to get the summation of the raw scores. Remember, once we're in a frequency distribution table, for almost anything we need, we have to use both columns together. You can't just go down that X column and go 10 plus 9 plus 8 plus 7 plus 6. Because you're ignoring the frequencies. There are 2 6s. There are 3 7s. So remember, what we really want to do here is get the summation of the products of the raw scores times their frequencies. When we do that, our answer is 93. Multiply across, add down. So 10 times 1 is 10, plus 2 times 2 is 18, plus, right? And then for part C, it's asking us for what? Oh, for the summation of adjusted raw scores when we've taken 1 off of all of them. So this is basically the same procedure as what's above it. But first we have to reduce all the raw scores by 1. So the 10s become 9s, so there's 1 9 now. The 9s become 8s, so there's 2 8s now. The 8s become 7s, so there's 4 7s now, right? So we subtract 1 from all of the raw scores, order of operations, and then we want to sum them up. But remember, we still have to multiply these adjusted scores by their frequencies. How many of this adjusted value is it? How many of that adjusted value is it? When you calculate this correctly, you should find the answer is 81. And then lastly in here is question 15. And 15 gives us some raw score, or I'm sorry, 15 says a survey is given to a sample of college students, or survey given to a sample of college students contained questions about the following variables. For each variable, identify the kind of graph that would be used to display the distribution of scores. Now, this is another one where I think they wrote it a little bit weird because it looks like we have three choices: histogram, polygon, or bar graph. Well, from class, what we learned is that histograms and polygons are both used for data for samples measured at the interval or ratio level. So they're the same answer. There really isn't three choices here. There's only two choices, really. There's nothing given to you here to tell you if it should be a histogram or a polygon. Those are both the same answer. So what we really need to do then is look through parts A through D and simply say, what's the level of measurement? Is it nominal or ordinal, where we would need the bar graph? Or is it interval or ratio, where we would need either the histogram or the polygon? Again, that's really the same answer two different ways. So A says age. If I say, how old are you? And how old is that person? And how old is the next person? If we're measuring your age, we're assuming in years here. That would be at the ratio level, right? That, again, if you are 25 years old and I'm 105 years old, we know what the answers are. We know who's more and less. We know exactly how much more and less. And you can't get a negative answer. You've got a true zero. So if we are at the ratio level, we would use either a histogram or a polygon. Same, both answers work. B, birth order, position amongst your siblings. Are you the firstborn, the secondborn, the thirdborn? Well, if you're firstborn and I'm secondborn, we know who was born first. Therefore, we know who's older and who's younger. But do we know exactly how much more? Not really, right? We could be twins that you just came out 2 minutes ahead of me. Or you could have been born 20 years ahead of me. You have a big gap in the family. We don't know how much distance there is. If we don't know how much distance there is, then we are at the ordinal level, which means we want the bar graph. C says academic major. Are you a nursing major? Are you a psychology major? Are you a sociology major? These are names with no mathematical values. You don't have more major or less major, just a different major. So that's nominal. And nominal, again, the answer would be bar graph. And then lastly, for 15D, it asks about, are you a registered voter? Yes or no? This, once again, is just nominal. Either you are or you aren't. There's no mathematical value associated to those two things. Social value, but no mathematical value attached to that. If there are no mathematical values, there's no rankings, which means, again, nominal, which means, again, bar graph. So those are our answers for questions 15A through D. Those are our answers for the labs for Chapter 2. Keep practicing, keep reaching out with questions you've got, and we'll see you down the road for Chapter 3.